Hey, beautiful, please consider subscribing to our channel if you've been enjoying these stories. Your support helps a lot. Aid us in reaching our goal of 1,000 subscribers.
The scent of sizzling meat hit me before I even stepped out of the truck. Confused, I cut the engine and sat still for a second, scanning my house. Everything looked normal, until I heard laughter coming from my backyard. A woman's cackle and a man's chuckle, distant but clear as a bell. That was odd. I don't have roommates. I don't have guests. And no one should be in my yard. I grabbed my keys and slammed the door behind me, heart already thudding in my chest. I rounded the corner of my fence, and there they were, two total strangers lounging in my garden chairs, sipping lemonade from my own glasses. One of them had the audacity to prop his feet on my koi pond's edge, right where I'd installed the new stonework last weekend. A red cooler sat half open beside them, dripping condensation into my flower bed. My flower bed. "Excuse me," I said, trying to keep my voice level, "can someone tell me what the hell you're doing in my yard?" The woman blinked at me behind oversized sunglasses. The man looked up and grinned, completely unfazed. "Oh, Karen said it was fine," he said, as if that settled the matter. "Karen?" I echoed, stunned. "Who's Karen?" The woman smirked. "Karen, you know, the HOA president? She said we could enjoy the yard for a bit, said it was okay since it's part of the neighborhood green space." That was the moment I felt it, the deep, icy stab of disbelief sinking into anger. My yard. My fence. My koi pond. This wasn't some communal patch of grass. This was mine. I didn't even respond. I turned on my heel and marched straight to the house at the end of the cul-de-sac, where I already knew Karen would be, because she always was. Karen looked like the queen of the block, perched on her porch with a mimosa in one hand and a pink tablet in the other, oversized sunglasses perched on her nose like a crown. She didn't even flinch when I walked up, just gave me that tight-lipped smile of hers. "Karen," I said, barely containing myself, "why are there strangers in my backyard?" She waved a hand lazily as if swatting away an annoying fly. "Oh, calm down. They're just friends from my Bible study. They were curious about your garden and I figured, why not? It's so lovely. You should be proud to share it." "Proud?" I stopped myself. My jaw clenched. "You gave strangers permission to enter my property? To eat and sit and touch things in my yard?" Karen looked genuinely confused, as if I was the unreasonable one. "Oh please, it's just a yard. You act like it's Fort Knox. You should be more neighborly." I stepped back, stunned. Not angry, stunned star. It was like talking to someone from another planet. I dealt with controlling people before, but Karen was something else. She didn't just break boundaries, she ignored them as if they never mattered in the first place. "I want them out. Now." Her smile didn't fade, but her tone sharpened. "You might want to be careful with that attitude. The HOA has a say in how we use shared green spaces, and your yard does sit right on the border. We've all noticed how possessive you are." I stared at her. "That land is on my deed." Karen's smile returned, wider this time. "Maybe. Maybe not. You know, maps can be confusing. Either way, I'm sure we'll sort it out at the next board meeting. Unless you're planning to cause a scene?" That was the moment I realized something terrifying. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Karen wasn't just being inconsiderate. She was testing me. She was flexing her power. And the worst part? She truly believed she could get away with it. The next day, a warning letter arrived on my doorstep. HOA violation, unneighborly behavior. A $50 fine, citing aggressive confrontation. I nearly laughed. Except it wasn't funny. It was a message, loud and clear. Karen had just declared war. I tried to fight back the right way. I called the HOA's legal line. I double-checked my property records and confirmed the boundary lines. I printed everything out and walked into the HOA office with a folder under my arm. Karen was already there, seated like royalty at the head of the table with her cousin, her friend Becky, and two other board members I barely recognized. All of them nodded politely as I explained the situation, then smiled as they voted to uphold the fine. "Rules are rules," Karen said sweetly, scribbling the final note onto the paper. "And we have to maintain harmony in the neighborhood." Harmony. Right. Meanwhile, people kept showing up in my yard. Sometimes for a prayer circle, sometimes just to enjoy the roses. Karen had started advertising it as a HOA tranquility spot in her weekly Facebook posts. She never mentioned it was my yard. She just posted filtered photos of strangers relaxing beside my koi pond, captioned with things like, "Nature is for everyone." When I tried to stop one group at the gate, Karen slapped me with another fine, for obstruction of community use. She even accused me of damaging the fence and demanded I restore it per HOA aesthetic standards. It was a twisted, slow-motion takeover of the only space I truly loved. I stopped sleeping well. Every creak outside made me jump. I started avoiding my own backyard. My sanctuary felt like a prison cell under surveillance. I'd never been a confrontational man. I liked my peace, my quiet. But that woman, she turned my silence into ammunition. She used it as proof that I was weak, and now she was walking all over me. One afternoon, I watched from my kitchen window as another stranger strolled into my garden with a yoga mat, set it down, and began stretching. Just like that. Like it was a public park. And all I could do was clench my fists and stare. My heart pounded. My jaw ached from grinding my teeth. That's when I remembered a conversation I'd had nearly 4 years ago. I'd been working security at a charity bike run in the city. I helped a guy named Rex patch up his Harley after it tipped on gravel. In return, he told me, "If anyone ever disrespects your home, your space, call me. We take territory seriously." Rex wasn't your average Sunday rider. He led a motorcycle club called the Iron Fangs. Rough-looking guys, sure, but they had rules. Respect. Boundaries. Loyalty. All the things Karen had thrown in the trash the moment she decided my yard was hers to share. I stared at the contact in my phone for a long time, thumb hovering. I didn't want trouble. I wanted peace. But Karen hadn't left me any peace to claim. Just a war I never asked for. My thumb moved. The screen lit up. Dialing Rex. And that was the moment I stopped feeling helpless. The next morning I woke up to the sound of voices, again. I pulled back the curtain hoping I was imagining it, but no. 2 more people were meandering through my yard like it was a botanical garden, taking pictures of the koi pond and gesturing animatedly toward my newly planted rose bushes. One of them crouched down to touch the water. My blood went cold. I stormed outside, heart hammering in my chest, but before I could say a word, the man looked up with a big grin. "Hey." Karen said this was the neighborhood serenity space. She gave us the code to the side gate. The gate. She gave them the gate code. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I simply turned around and walked straight to my garage, hands trembling with fury. I changed the code that very minute, erased the old one, and locked the gate with a heavy-duty padlock. Let's see how many surprise yoga sessions they'd host now. But that only made things worse. Later that afternoon, Karen posted a long-winded HOA update to the community group. The usual pastel graphic with smiling cartoon houses at the top, followed by several paragraphs that would have made a politician blush. She accused an unnamed resident of disrupting communal wellness efforts, claimed the HOA board had provisionally designated my side yard as part of the shared green zone, and announced an emergency meeting to address what she called behavior unbecoming of a community member. My name wasn't in the post, but everyone knew. Comments flooded in. Wow, some people take life way too seriously. Maybe don't live in a neighborhood if you hate neighbors? Karen, thank you for promoting peace and connection. I sat there, staring at my screen, heat rushing to my face. Every line in that post twisted reality into a weapon, making me the villain for daring to protect my own home. My phone buzzed with a text, from my neighbor, Dave. "Dude. She's got the board eating out of her hand. Sorry." That evening, I attended the emergency HOA meeting at the community clubhouse. I brought a folder full of documents, my deed, the original property map, HOA guidelines, everything. I walked in expecting to defend myself with facts. What I didn't expect was to find Karen already there, seated at the long table in front like she owned the place, flanked by her cousin Glenn and her best friend Becky, both board members of course. She stood as I approached and immediately launched into a speech. "Thank you all for coming. As many of you know, we've had a troubling uptick in hostile interactions centered around what was intended to be a peaceful community space. We're here to preserve the spirit of our neighborhood, not to entertain aggression." The room clapped. Actual applause. I hadn't even said a word yet. When I finally got a chance to speak, I laid out everything. My documents, my boundaries, the photos of my garden before and after strangers had trampled through it. I cited the HOA charter itself, which clearly stated private property rights must be respected. Karen never even looked at my paperwork. She just smiled and said, "We appreciate your passion. But our interpretation of the guidelines differs slightly." The board voted. 3-2. Motion passed. Effective immediately, the community relaxation zone would be marked on the HOA's digital map, and I'd be fined for restricting access without cause. $600. $600? For trying to keep strangers out of my backyard. That night, I sat on my porch until the moon was high, staring out at the garden I barely recognized. The grass had new boot prints, the roses were bent, and the koi pond had a plastic cup floating in it. One of the lanterns I'd installed was gone entirely. This wasn't just about territory anymore. Karen was out to break me. She was using her title, her connections, and her reputation to twist the truth, manipulate perception, and isolate me from the community I had never even wronged. I realized then that logic wouldn't win this war. Reason meant nothing to someone who redefined it at will. I considered selling the house. Just packing up and leaving. But that felt like defeat, and more than that, it felt like betrayal. Not to Karen. To myself. This house was supposed to be my peace. My space. I'd worked too hard to carve it out of the chaos of life. I wasn't going to let her turn it into a public park just because she liked controlling things. I thought about the Iron Fangs again. Rex's voice rang in my memory, gravelly and direct. Territory's sacred. You don't let anyone take it unless you're ready to give up who you are. They weren't a gang, not in the Hollywood sense. They were more like a brotherhood of misfits who followed one rule: respect where you stand. I'd met Rex after a long shift working overnight security at a community benefit ride. His Harley had tipped when someone clipped it in the parking lot. I helped him lift it, got him bandages, and he handed me a business card, black leather pressed with just a number and the club's name. He'd said it with a straight face: "If anyone ever violates your space, call me." We settle things the old way. Respect for respect. I hadn't taken it seriously back then. Just thought it was one of those things people said. But now, with my garden wrecked, my name tarnished, and my sense of safety shattered, I found myself staring at that old card like it was a lifeline. I didn't call him that night. Not yet. Instead, I started preparing. First, I bought a few folding chairs, strong ones capable of holding broad-shouldered men. Then I cleared the lawn, removed the fragile decorations. I set up a cooler by the back wall and filled it with sodas and ice. I cleared space on the patio. It looked like I was getting ready for a gathering, and in a way I was. Karen would expect me to sulk. She wanted me to stew in silence while she spun her lies and hosted more uninvited guests. But I wasn't going to hide anymore. I looked around my yard one last time before going back inside. Tomorrow everything would change. Then I picked up my phone, scrolled to the contact labeled Rex, Iron Fangs, and pressed call. It rang once, then twice. A deep voice answered. "This the guy with the koi pond?" "It is," I said. "And I've got a situation." Pause. Then a low chuckle. "All right. Text me the address. We'll ride out Saturday." And just like that, I wasn't alone anymore. The neighborhood was never silent, but it had a certain rhythm. Birds chirping, sprinklers hissing, the occasional dog barking behind a white picket fence. That morning, everything shattered under the thunderous growl of engines. It began as a faint rumble. Subtle at first, like distant thunder. Then louder. A vibration in the concrete, a rolling pulse that made windows tremble and curtains flutter. I stood on my porch, coffee in hand, and waited. A line of chrome and leather appeared at the corner, single file, sharp as blades. 15 motorcycles, gleaming under the morning sun, slowly turned onto our street. Each rider wore the same emblem across their backs, an iron fang clutched in a skeletal fist. Black jackets, mirrored shades, heavy boots. They didn't shout. They didn't rev their engines for show. They just rode in like a storm marching on parade. Rex led the pack. He peeled off first, stopping directly in front of my driveway. He pulled off his helmet and gave me a single nod. I returned it. No need for words. We both understood why they were here. One by one, the riders parked along the curb in perfect lines. No one blocked driveways. No trash bins were disturbed. Neighbors peered through blinds and over hedges, eyes wide. Some stepped onto porches, holding their phones like shields. Karen, of course, stood at her bay window, clutching her coffee like it might leap from her hand. Her mouth moved behind the glass, muttering something to herself. I led the crew through the side gate, the one Karen used to hand out like candy, and into the backyard. No one spoke until they were all inside. Then, slowly they began to settle in. Folding chairs unfolded. Sodas cracked open. Someone started playing soft blues from a portable speaker. It was casual, peaceful, deliberate. Rex approached me near the koi pond, crouching down to admire the fish. "You weren't kidding. Nice place." "I try to keep it that way," I said. "Not anymore, I see," he muttered, eyeing the trampled plants. "She let people do this?" I nodded. He looked up at me, his face unreadable behind his sunglasses. "She picked the wrong yard." The afternoon unfolded like a strange neighborhood dream. Rex's crew wasn't just intimidating, they were bizarrely courteous. One guy helped me replant a crushed lily bush. Another offered to repaint the garden gnome someone had cracked. Rex, ever the leader, coordinated quietly, orchestrating the entire visit like a host at a family reunion. Meanwhile, the neighborhood watched. Karen couldn't take her eyes off us. She called an emergency HOA assembly within the hour. By sunset, cars began arriving. Board members filed into the clubhouse in a flurry of tension, accompanied by murmurs and judgmental glances. I didn't go. I didn't need to. Instead, I hosted. Neighbors tiptoed by, trying to eavesdrop. Kids peeked around hedges, too curious to resist. A woman I barely knew from 2 houses down waved awkwardly, then offered a plate of brownies, just in case they were hungry. One of the bikers took it, bowed graciously, and offered her a root beer. Then Karen finally snapped. She stormed down her walkway like a general on a warpath. Her hair was pinned perfectly, her nails fresh, but her expression betrayed a crack in the porcelain. She reached the gate, locked again, and rattled it. "Open this gate. Right now," she demanded. Rex turned his head slowly, not rising from his chair. "Afraid I don't take orders, ma'am?" "This is a residential neighborhood," she barked, her voice loud enough for half the block to hear. "You people don't belong here." A few of the bikers chuckled under their breath. Karen turned purple. "Your friend," she snarled, pointing a trembling finger at me, "is in violation of multiple HOA codes. He's hosting an unauthorized gathering, inviting outsiders, creating a public disturbance." "Are we disturbing anyone?" Rex asked, turning to the bikers. They looked around. One of them belched softly. "Didn't think so," Rex replied, then turned back to Karen. "We've been nothing but polite." Cling. "Quiet. You're the one yelling through a locked gate." Karen huffed, pulling out her phone. "I'm calling the police." She stormed off, heels clacking angrily down the sidewalk. I waited, arms crossed. It was only a matter of time. 20 minutes later, 2 squad cars rolled up. Officers stepped out slowly, hands resting near their belts but not on their weapons. They scanned the scene, the calm music, the folding chairs, the non-alcoholic drinks, and the immaculate property. Karen intercepted them with the fervor of a televangelist mid-sermon. "They've taken over the yard. They're threatening the neighborhood. Look at them." The older of the 2 officers, a heavy-set man with a graying mustache, raised an eyebrow. "You mean, this?" He gestured to the garden, where 2 bikers were helping a neighbor's child feed a koi. Karen stammered, unsure how to twist the image into something sinister. "He changed the gate code without approval. This area was designated for HOA communal use." The officer turned to me. "Can I see your property deed?" I handed him the folder I'd brought. He took his time flipping through it, then showed his partner a page. After a quiet word, they walked over to Karen. "Ma'am, your HOA designation doesn't override individual property rights," he said calmly. "According to these documents, this is entirely private land." Karen's jaw worked like it had lost the ability to function. "In fact," the officer added, "unless you've been invited here, you're currently trespassing." Gasps rippled from a few watching neighbors. Someone's phone camera was already recording. Karen looked around, realizing how quickly the tide had turned. The officer's words echoed, "You're trespassing." It was a line no HOA president ever wanted to hear. Her cheeks flushed bright red as she turned back toward her house without another word, practically running up the steps. Rex glanced at me, a subtle smirk on his face. "You sure know how to throw a party." But it wasn't over yet. One of the bikers had been streaming the confrontation on social media. The caption read, "HOA Karen calls cops on us for existing peacefully." Within hours, it racked up thousands of views. The comments came in fast. Classic Karen energy. She got wrecked by a koi pond in respect. I want biker friends now. The video was shared on multiple HOA satire pages and even a few local news meme accounts. Karen, who had carefully cultivated her public image as the poised and charitable face of the neighborhood, was now being roasted online with nicknames like Gate Code Greta and Mimosas and Meltdowns. That night my phone buzzed again. It was Dave. "Man, that was incredible. You've got the whole block talking." "She's livid." I just smiled. For the first time in weeks, I actually felt at peace in my own home. Rex clapped a hand on my shoulder as they began packing up. "Let us know if she tries again. We don't forget friends." As the bike started back up, the engines roared like a final warning through the night. One by one they rolled out, fading into the distance like echoes of justice in chrome and steel. I locked the gate behind them. And for the first time in a long while, it stayed shut. The fallout was immediate. By the next morning, the video had crossed over 1 million views. Karen's name wasn't tagged directly, but the neighborhood wasn't large and the visuals spoke louder than any caption. Her face, contorted in righteous fury as she rattled my gate, was frozen in frame after frame like a modern-day villain meme. Someone even edited dramatic music behind her confrontation with the police, each accusation punctuated by a sad trombone or record scratch. The community Facebook page, once her personal fiefdom, turned against her like a tide breaking loose. Comments poured in. Some laughed. Some expressed disbelief. And a few, neighbors who had once smiled at her cocktail hours, began to ask uncomfortable questions. Wait, isn't that Mark's yard? She said it was communal property. That doesn't look very communal. Did she really give out someone else's gate code? By the afternoon, HOA headquarters posted a notice. A special audit would be conducted to review documentation on recent territorial designations. It was stiffly worded, but everyone knew what it meant. Karen was in hot water. I didn't gloat. I didn't post. I didn't comment. I just kept tending my garden. I replaced the broken lantern. I added new stones around the koi pond. I worked with my hands and stayed quiet because for once I didn't need to speak. The truth had already done its job. But Karen wasn't finished. She never was. 3 days after the biker visit, she showed up on my doorstep. No camera crews. No neighbors. Just her, and a pie in her hands. I opened the door, more curious than concerned. Hello, she said, forcing a smile. I wanted to apologize. Things got out of hand. I may have misunderstood some property lines and intentions. I brought this as a peace offering. I stared at the pie like it might explode. Peach crumble, she added awkwardly. It's store-bought. But still. She extended it, but her eyes weren't warm. They were calculating, flickering, watching me for any hint of weakness. I appreciate the gesture, I said, not taking the pie. But I'm not interested in smoothing things over. What you did wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a campaign. You knew exactly what you were doing. Her smile twitched. I'm just trying to move forward, she said tightly. I nodded. That's good. Because you'll need both hands for all the paperwork coming your way. She frowned. What paperwork? The audit, I said plainly. The revised HOA boundary map. The complaints submitted to the oversight committee. The violations you signed off on without board approval. Her face drained of color. You think this ends because you showed up with sugar? I asked, stepping closer. You let strangers into my sanctuary. You called the cops on my guests. You humiliated me and fined me for protecting my own land. You don't get to rewrite that with crumble. She stepped back, lips parting, but no sound came out. I shut the door. 2 days later, HOA vice president, previously Karen's lapdog, resigned. Officially, it was to focus on family. Unofficially, the neighborhood gossip will spun fast and merciless. Then Glenn, her cousin on the board, got caught falsifying maintenance receipts for 3 different homes, including his own. The oversight committee took control. A recall vote was announced. Karen tried to fight it. She printed flyers. She gave speeches. She played the victim. But it was too late. People had seen her for what she was. The woman who weaponized rules. Who turned a peaceful backyard into a battlefield. Who tried to bury a neighbor under fines until he broke. She lost the vote by a landslide. The day they boxed up her HOA office, I happened to be trimming the hedges. She walked past with her clipboard hugged to her chest. Flanked by 2 committee reps, she glanced at me tight-lipped as if daring me to smile. I didn't. That afternoon, a new email from the HOA arrived in every resident's inbox. The subject line read, Revised Community Charter and Apology. It included a full admission that my property had never been public space, that the gate code had been distributed improperly, and that the violations against me had been revoked. They even offered restitution for the stress I endured, something unheard of in HOA history. But none of that felt as good as what happened next. Rex and the Iron Fangs returned, not with engines blazing but with shovels and paint. They helped me rebuild the flower bed. One guy welded a metal sculpture of a koi to replace the stolen lantern. Rex placed it in the center of the pond, its iron fins glinting in the sun. We stood back admiring the view. You think she'll try again? He asked casually. Not with her head still attached, I said. Figuratively, of course. He laughed. The video of Karen's meltdown continued to make its rounds online. Someone edited it into a fake trailer for a horror movie, The HOA Witch. It was ridiculous and hilarious and perfect. The thumbnail alone got thousands of clicks. Karen eventually shut down her social media. Her house went up for sale 2 months later. I didn't throw a party when she left. But I did open my gate and invite the neighbors, real neighbors, the ones who kept their fences and boundaries intact, for an afternoon barbecue. We grilled, we laughed, and for the first time since moving in I felt like I truly belonged. One of the neighbors raised a glass to me and said, "To the guy who stood his ground." And I raised mine back, smiling as the iron koi caught the evening sun. "Here's to knowing where your territory ends," I said, "and who's stupid enough to cross it."